Welcome to the NEREJ NYREJ podcast. I'm Rick Kaplan, your host, and my guest today is Pete Reese. He is the president of Reelvest Properties, a land development and investment company with nearly 2 decades of real estate experience as a broker and investor. Pete has successfully purchased and sold hundreds of pieces of real estate for profit over the years. And I give you Pete Reese. Hi, Pete.
Well, hey, Rick, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. And we were talking a little before we started this podcast. You're from California, so you're a little outside of our realm, but real estate is real estate.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm located in California, but we buy and sell properties all over the country. So, and in fact, we were just in New England this past summer and had just an amazing time. We stayed in Providence for a few weeks. My daughter was at a camp there, and we just took day trips kind of in every single direction and really got to explore the whole area. So I thought it was kind of a really cool trip. And we, there was still many other things that we wanted to get done and we just didn't have time for. And we did a day trip every day, like an hour or two drive, and just kind of explored and tried to check all these things off our list. But really cool area and so much to do there as well.
In Providence, Rhode Island, right?
Yeah, well, that's what we were actually in Riverside, I guess it was, which is just south of Providence. We rented an Airbnb there, but it was kind of central location because we were able to go off kind of in all directions. We went to Cape Cod and we went down to, Connecticut, and we went up to Boston, so we kind of tried to make the most of the trip and do something new every day.
Well, that's the nice part about New England. Nothing is too far.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
You can be in Rhode Island. You could go to Maine in the same day,
Yeah.
Yep. With California, you're in the south part of it, it'll take you maybe 2 days to get to the northern part of it. I
know. It's crazy. Well, it's like an 8-hour drive up to San Francisco. On the map, it doesn't look that bad, but it's pretty far. And then, San Francisco is only about halfway up the state. So if you're going to go to the northern part of the state, you're going to really be in for quite a drive.
Yeah. So let's get back to what you do, Pete. You're in kind of a niche type of business. You deal with land. Tell us a little bit of how you started out in that.
Yeah. So I've been in real estate for quite some time. I've been a real estate broker since 2006. Before that, I was actually flipping homes. So that was our introduction into real estate, buying and selling properties before the market crash here in Southern California from like the 2007 to 2009. And then at that time when the market crashed, I focused on listing properties for banks. So I was an REO listing broker. And that was about 2 years of my career where I was just kind of solely focused on listing as many of those properties as possible because that's pretty much the only thing that was selling at the time. Also transitioned a little bit into helping people with short sales. And then after that, I really got into finding properties, kind of representing all these large investor clients that I'd come to know through the REO listing side of things, and then finding them deals and just kind of representing them on the buy side and sometimes on the listing side, but just to bring them as many deals as I could. Got into another business online with my wife, kind of out of real estate for a little while. And then about 2 years ago right now, I knew I was getting the itch and I needed to get back into real estate, and I wanted to get back in and from the investor side of things. So I read some information online about people that were flipping land, essentially, like buying and selling raw land, and read some stuff about people, buying these properties for $10,000, selling them for $30,000. I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. I think I could do that. I like buying and selling, and I think I'm pretty good at recognizing a deal when I see one. So I went down this rabbit hole and learning everything I could about that, how to evaluate land, and just kind of dove in, and that launched a whole new business for us. So in 2021, March of 2021, we sold our first property using this model, resold our first property using this model. And that was March of 2021. So we ended out 2021 doing about 1.2 million in revenue at about 50% gross profit margin. So that was, every property we buy, we try to double our money on. So that's kind of our rule of thumb. And we were able to do that on average in 2021. 2022 ended up with about 3.5 million in revenue and the same, about 50% gross profit margin. And the real kicker is, the interesting thing about this business is it's land, but it short-term holds. And we were able to, our average hold time is about 60 days. So that's the whole time we own the property and go through a resale contract and everything. That's our whole hold time. So it's a really interesting model in that we're buying properties off market. We're doing some minor development things to the property sometimes. I use the word development, but a lot of times it's simply hiring someone to clear path through the property. It could be hiring a surveyor, could be getting a perk test done. Sometimes we'll do some minor subdivisions on the property. Say for instance, maybe we'll buy a 100-acre property and then we'll subdivide it into 5 20-acre properties and then resell them individually. So we'll do something like that sometimes. But a lot of times we just buy a property, do some kind of minor things to it, and then resell it right away. So
I mean, that's very interesting because, I talk to a lot of people that do flipping of homes. Now, it's probably easier to find homes. It's certainly like in the New England area, and I'm sure like California probably has some similar issues. Finding land is just like finding a needle in a haystack sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So,
yeah.
When you buy a home to flip, there's got to be a little difference here because you're not doing any of the work really
Right.
on the land, where you have to do the work on the home and not normally making a 50% markup on it.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. I think it's much easier than dealing with home flips, and I've done both. I've started my real estate career in flipping homes, and it's really nice not to have to do all the renovations on these properties to kind of get the value there. I mean, so we're generating all our deals by sending out direct mail. We'll pull lists we use a company called Data Tree, which is a First American company, and basically they compile data from pretty much every county and every parcel of land and homes as well in the whole country. So it allows us to build these lists. We'll target a certain area. We'll target a certain property type. Say for instance, we'll look at a certain county, and we're buying all over the country. So most of the deals that we're doing are on the East Coast and in one of the East Coast states. But so we'll look at building a list of say 10 acres plus in this certain county, and with no structures on the property. So we're just looking at land, and then we'll send them out an actual offer. So we're sending out a 2-page mailer, which first page is a letter kind of describing why we're contacting them, who we are, what we can do for them. Second page is actually an offer, a 1-page purchase agreement, and it has the details about their property and an actual offer price on there. And we're generating those offer prices based off of the averages for that particular area. Say, for instance, we know in that area that raw land goes for about 10,000 an acre. We might offer them 4,000 an acre, and then it's automatically generated on that letter, based off of how many acres they have. So if they have, 10 acres and we're offering 4,000 an acre, then the purchase price will be 40,000. So that gives us room to do some improvements to the property once we get it, pay for some of the due diligence that we have to do during the purchase process, and then also pay for transaction costs on both sides, the buy side, and then on the resale side, we always use agents or local land brokers to resell the properties for us. So there's commissions on that side as well and closing costs. So that generally allows us to price it slightly below retail market value to attract attention and to sell it quickly, and then also hit those numbers that we're trying to hit.
So that sounds like it works well if someone has 10, 15 plus acres.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, I don't know how well that would work with a 1-2 acre property.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of a little bit of a different niche than I do. It does work, and there are land investors that just focus on those type of properties. And generally, those 1 to 2 acre properties, or even smaller, are in a city or close to in a town or close to center of population in some way. So those ones are actually sometimes maybe even more valuable than a larger 10-acre property. But there's a lot more variables, and it's a lot more difficult to kind of hone in on an offer price on those properties. Plus, there are potentially a lot more due diligence issues that can come up. And for those reasons, I kind of like dealing with the bigger properties. It's just kind of simpler, really, in a way. And there's still a very active market for those type of properties. And I know that if we can buy a nice property for the right price, then we're going to be able to sell it quickly. Some of the smaller, lots only have one exit plan, and that's like, something that a property that someone could build a house on. If it's 1 to 2 acres, if some point in the process we discover it's not buildable, or it would be really difficult to build on for some reason or another, then you're kind of stuck. And with these larger properties, there's kind of more than one exit plan generally. It could obviously be a home site, or maybe a place for someone to put a manufactured home on there, or even a cabin or something like that. Or it could be just a recreational property for people to use four-wheelers on it, or they could have livestock, or any of these different purposes. But that's kind of why I gravitate to the larger properties. I've done smaller ones, but it's just kind of my focus now to do the larger ones for those reasons.
So yeah, a lot of developers love the big, like 50 acres, 100 acres that they can develop hotels and shopping and multifamily or residential. What makes this so lucrative? Are you looking for those developers to buy that kind of a property?
We do run into those type of properties sometimes. We've purchased some commercial properties. Now, these aren't, commercial properties within a major metropolitan area, because we're simply not mailing, properties in New York City or something like that. We're generally mailing the counties that are sort of on the outskirts of these major population areas. So, within a 1 hour drive of kind of some of these areas. And it can get pretty rural pretty fast, even outside of a major city. So we do run into some of the properties sometimes where their best use would be a residential subdivision. And on a couple of these cases, what we've done is we've purchased the property, hired an engineer to basically do a sketch plan of what a potential residential subdivision would look like. And then we list it with a commercial broker and then resell it in that way. And the benefit of doing that is it kind of shows what it can be. And then, we're not getting the full value of what we would get if we would go through the full entitlement process to get the subdivision done on paper, or to actually do any of the infrastructure work, like putting in the roads or the sidewalks or any of that kind of stuff. We don't go that far, and we'd get more if we did that, but we'd also have to invest a lot more in the property. So I think the happy medium is that to kind of sell the potential on it, and then the buyer would be a potential developer or builder who would have their own vision for the property anyhow, and would likely change what we had on the sketch plan and get it approved the way they wanted to get it approved. So
you never have any interest in doing your own development. You rather sell it off to someone that would do that type of development.
Yeah. And that's because it's simple for me. And I like that concept of creating something and doing that. It's just a longer term game. This is a short-term business model. It's a short-term cash flow business model. And the return on investment is like extraordinary, especially when you can turn your money, or you can double your money every, in theory, every 60 days or so. The numbers start to get really big, really fast. So I love the concept of doing a development or subdivision. It's just kind of a whole different area than what I'm involved with. And I might work on certain projects like that over the, as a side thing to my main business. But for right now, that's not my focus.
So, with the way the real estate market is today,
Right.
You have the developers that a lot of times before they purchase the property, there's a lot of due diligence that will go into it.
Right.
And you're saying that you like to turn the property over every 60 days. How do you do that so quickly?
Yeah.
Because that's got to be a trick.
Yeah. Well, so I guess there's two sides to that. Most of the properties we do not fall into that situation where we would have a commercial buyer, like a buyer for a residential subdivision or something. Most of the time, these are just individual buyers that are looking to purchase something that's, maybe a recreational property or potential home site, that type of thing. Most of those transactions we can get done with a 30-day contract, a 30-day escrow. If it is a property like we were discussing where it's a commercial potential, obviously those escrows are going to be a lot longer and we'd have to hold them longer. But they're few and far between. The great majority of our properties are the, quicker turn type situations.
So you're not looking for properties that are in your backyard. You're
No. In fact, I've only done a couple of deals here in California. There's outside of the kind of major cities in here, a lot of it's desert and not very desirable properties. And I know some land investors do, deal in those type of properties. I just don't personally enjoy those type of properties. So that's why I gravitate towards other areas. I like trees. I like flat areas. I don't know. I like, I like beautiful properties, I guess.
Like Yellowstone.
So, yeah, something like that would be great.
See, yeah, someone else wants to buy up all that property.
Yeah, I know.
But so they're looking to do the same thing you're doing.
Yes, that's for sure.
But that's all great. And I know sometimes with just buying land, the financing becomes an issue.
Yeah.
Because there's no structure, you just have land. How do you structure your financing? Now, you said you were in the mortgage business, so maybe you have a better idea than the average guy.
Well, not in the mortgage business. I was a residential broker here, but we're purchasing all these properties with our own cash. And there have been a couple larger deals that I've done where I brought in a money partner. So basically, in a situation like that, I brought the deal to the table, and they sent the money to close the transaction, and then we split the profits when it sold. So I have done that. But as far as getting like a hard money lender or private money for land purchases, it's really pretty tough. But you can find partners. So there's kind of an active market of partners out there willing to partner with you on these deals as long as it's a real deal. So for instance, one of them I did where it was actually a very large property, 650 acres. And the purchase price on it was a great deal, beautiful property, lots of trees. It was in the Southeast. It was $315,000 on the purchase price. And we ended up reselling it for $595,000. This one took a little bit longer. I think it took 5 months to sell. We owned it for a total of 5 months, but the money partner came and, wired the $315,000 to close the deal. We put it on the market. We did a couple things. Like I think we spent about $14,000 in having some paths cleared through the property to make it more marketable. And then we resold it after about 5 months for, I think it was $595,000. So we each ended up with, splitting the profits on it. I think we each ended up with like $108,000. So it was a good deal for the money partner because, I brought the deal to the table, something that was not available, and his money was just sitting there. So he made $108,000 on his $315,000 investment in 5 months, which is really good return if you're comparing that to the stock market or something like that generally.
Right.
And then for my side of things on this deal, it was really pretty good no matter how you look at it, because I didn't even have to invest any of my own money into it at all. It just it was just all profit aside from the cost I had to acquire the deal in the first place.
So do you buy these properties on spec, or do you already have someone in the background that might be interested?
No, I purchased them all before I have a buyer lined up.
Oh,
yeah,
that's interesting.
So, but we're very confident, like at this point, we know what we're doing. We know how to recognize a deal And we have a whole due diligence process that we go through really quickly. Like our big thing is, hey, and the reason we're able to secure these deals is because we're buying them off market, number one, but we're also we're offering a cash quick close situation. And a lot of times land has got that reputation that, hey, it's going to take a while to sell, and a lot of these brokers have no real sense of urgency when it comes to listing properties for other people. So I think that that's kind of the norm out there in the industry. Like they'll list things for kind of top dollar and just kind of wait for a potential buyer to call off for one of their signs or something like that. But we're a lot more aggressive in what we do, and we price things. First of all, we only buy good properties, and we price things slightly below market, so we'll attract a buyer right away. And yeah, so we don't have a buyer lined up, but we always use brokers. We try to find the top land broker in the area that we're dealing with. And we also kind of tie them into the due diligence process as well. Like when we're under contract to buy a property, we are reaching out to our broker partners and saying, hey, what do you think? What do you think about this property? What do you think it's worth? What should we be looking out for? And so they help us on the buy side and kind of steer us away from some potential things that we don't want to deal with or something. But then we list the property with them on the resale side to make it worth their while.
Let's say someone wants to get into this land purchasing and reselling, flipping of the land. How would you suggest someone starts out in that? And how do they find off-market properties?
Right. Well, first thing I would do is to kind of try to get a grasp of what's possible, like what kind of deals people are doing, how much they're paying for these properties, and what they're doing. I mean, I put together a resource which I kind of wish was there when I started in the business, because like I mentioned, I was just kind of reading some random stuff online about people talking about these deals that they were doing, but they were just people talking on the internet, and I had no idea if they were actually real or not. So I took that concept and I kind of probably went too far in the other direction. And I do a monthly income report, which details everything going on in their business, meaning the revenue we took in, the profit we took in that month, each individual deal that we did. I break down each of them, what we bought it for, what we sold it for, how much profit we made on that property, how long we held it for, and then also notes about that particular deal. So I do that because it kind of shows, I think, what's possible and what you can do in this business if you kind of follow the right system. The other thing is that, you're getting these deals by direct mail. So you need to have a letter that you can send out. You need to have a kind of a process in place to deal with that. So it's not just like sending out letters. You need to have the right mail house to deal with. You need to know how to put together this list. Need to know where to pull the list from. And so I tried to kind of put all those resources together. I've got a kind of community built around that where I'm kind of teaching other people how to do it. I don't have any sort of paid program or anything like that. I'm just kind of putting it out there at this point. For anyone that's interested. I've actually got my daughters doing this as well. They in fact, they started last year. They expressed some interest. My daughters are older. They're 22 and 20. And I've got a 12-year-old too, but she's not involved in this. But they came to me and they said, "Hey, Dad, we love what you're doing. Can we do it too?" Because they had started a corporation where they're going to offer another service, and that never really materialized to anything. But they had some money pulled together, so they each put in $4,000, and they wanted to know if they could do a couple of these land deals as well. And I said, sure. So I had a couple of smaller deals that were, I really wasn't that interested in because they were smaller. So they pulled in 4,000 each, and that was about a year and a half ago. And since then, they've actually parlayed that into 82,000. I think they've gotten their account. Oh, so they just kept that money kind of snowballing and reinvesting it in the next property. They actually just got a wire yesterday for their first property they sold this year. So they're very excited about it, and they're trying to ramp that up as well. So
That's not bad for young people to see that kind of cash flow into
Yeah,
their
and they've
bank
got no
account.
expenses too because they live with us, and
Right.
we're paying for all their expenses at this point. So it's a
Well,
good deal for them, and hopefully, with a little bit of extra time, they can get kind of an amazing start on life. So
yeah, well, now it's time to start charging them rent.
yeah, yeah, I know, I know. I can't bring myself to do it.
Well, you're
I
a better
probably
man than
should,
me.
you know.
Yeah. Well,
But
I think we covered all of that. You said there's some due diligence that you have to
yeah,
do
yes.
this, and is there quite a bit of due diligence? I know, you have to find out of environmental and all things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I have a whole checklist of stuff that we go through a whole process. So as soon as we get a property under contract, it kind of starts this whole chain reaction of events within our own system. So basically, we order a photographer and a drone photographer to go out to the property, walk the property, do an inspection, and report back to us on that to get some boots on the ground there. We also have another company that does some basic due diligence for us, like they're calling the city or the county, they're calling the utilities, they're finding out all these different things that we go through, like figuring out the zoning, a whole list of things where we're basically trying to determine if we think it's a buildable property or what you can do with the property. And then I've got a member of my team that kind of really reviews all this stuff in detail. We also send it, we do all of our transactions through a title company. So then, they do the title report and that comes back, and there's always things to review on there, and just to make sure there aren't any red flags that we're running into on the properties. And then we also, like I said, we loop in the brokers in the process as well. So we'll kind of compile all that information and share it with the broker that we're working with and ask them for their opinion on things, like the resale price and obviously the any of the due diligence or any of the issues that we maybe had a question on or we wanted their opinion on as well. But each property is different, and honestly, over all these properties we've done, it's rare that we find something that's just perfect that checks every single box. There's always something that's a little like, well, I wish this, this is not perfect, in a particular way. But those properties always end up selling. And as long as you've got properties that are overall just good properties, they will sell if they're priced right.
Right.
It's the ones that are the crappy properties that I stay away from or I don't want to deal with anymore. Like no landlocked properties, and you'd be surprised how many of them are actually out there. Like properties where these people own them and they have actually no legal access to get to their own property unless they maybe had a helicopter or something
Right.
like that.
Well, now it's a matter of now buying up the abutters, to get
Yeah, yeah, and some investors actually just focus on landlocked properties because they can get them so cheap, and then they just market them to the neighbors, or maybe they'll try to pay for an access easement from a neighbor, something like that. But it's just not my business model. But I'm
right.
sure that there's a lot of money that can be made just in dealing with those type of properties. I stay away from ones where there's a huge slope, it's on the side of a mountain and really can't do much with the property. I stay away from swampland. I stay away from, just anything like for instance, we got under contract with this one property, and on paper it looked great. We were buying it for a great price. It was in a really, really good area, really good up and coming area, and I felt that there was a lot of profit potential. We had a photographer go out to the property and walk it. And unfortunately, the pictures and the report did not come back the way I was anticipating. First picture I see is this really broken down like RV thing that was kind of at the entrance of this property. It was looked like something from Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
And and then the farther he got into the property, he noticed there were squatters on the property. And then I'm seeing all these pictures from the neighboring properties where it looked like almost like a makeshift dump of some sort, and these big 55-gallon drums of who knows what.
Oh.
And then there's pictures of the stream, and I swear the stream had like a green tint to it, and not just like a green algae tint. It was like a
Green
fluorescent green tint. Maybe it was just a picture, but I swear I looked at it and I'm like, no, we're not moving forward on this property. It was just like
Why look for trouble?
one red flag after another, So
Right. Yeah. I
But you
mean,
can't tell that from just looking at, because we have these apps that we use where we can, look at satellite images. We can look at the wetlands on the property, if it's in the FEMA flood zone, all these different overlays, the contours of the property. We could tell a lot about the property. We could tell 90% of a property just from looking at our computer screen, but it doesn't replace actually going out to the property and walking it, because a lot of those are the type of things that really just didn't show up on the satellite images. But would have been a big problem if I bought it, sight unseen.
yeah, and a lot of that stuff is like common sense.
Yep.
But and if you see something that is like blatant, the red flag is put up right away. So
Yep.
I can see that. Now, you
Yeah.
also have a podcast.
Yeah. We just launched it this week, in fact. So, and this is the name of it, Turning Profit.
Okay.
And yeah, if it's about real estate investing. We go into all forms of real estate investing, really, but we'll have a major focus on land investing and going through different things about our business model that we do. And like I said, the way we do things is not the only way to invest in land. It's just the model that we've been using and has worked for us. So we try to be really transparent about what we do, so in case other people are interested in doing it. So, and we've got a website, turningprofit.com, where people can go there and review those income reports. And also I did a presentation where it was actually the first 50 deals that we did in the business. And I thought that was it would be pretty interesting for people just to see kind of exactly where we started in the business, from the first deal we did to the 50th deal we did. We're way past that now, but it gives an idea of how we got started and what's possible in the business, and what kind of deals are out there. So, yeah, and then we've got a link to our community that we're building as well, brand new community that we launched around land flipping, where we'll be providing a lot of free course materials and things.
Well, I'm sure it will be a successful podcast, and the topic is very interesting. It's not something we hear a lot of people talking about, so I think you'll have a lot of interest.
Well, I hope, so.
I appreciate you sharing all that information with us, Pete.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, for sure.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on. We're talking with Pete Reese, and he's the president of Reelvest Properties, and he's got a podcast called Turning Profit. And I hope you all go and listen to his podcast as well. And you can all listen to ours on Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and the New England Real Estate Journal website, and the New York Real Estate Journal website. I'm Rick Kaplan from New England Real Estate Journal, and I think this deal's done.